Thank you everybody for being here today to discuss what's going on in Wauconda. I'm Nick Gowdy, the co-founder and director of Community and Government Relations with Open Local Illinois. We're a small nonprofit that's been in operation for just a little over a year and a half now. And we're made up of all volunteers. None of us do this full time. It's all part of our passion and desire to bring about more transparent government and to educate residents about the practices of their local government and being engaged in their local government process. So this is basically this is a blurb about what we do and who we are as an organization. I know some of you are already quite familiar with the work that we've done. So, in the beginning, we started working with Civic Lab, which is a Chicago-based organization that was focusing on TIF district transparency and the finances surrounding TIF districts. We currently, part of our board of directors is a former city manager with over 30 plus years of experience. So he's a great resource for our organization to have. So back in February, we were contacted by Irene and a few other residents in Wauconda regarding some of the issues that have been made public in the media and elsewhere, such as the discussion of closing the 911 call center, the appointment, the surprise appointment of the interim police chief. There was also the progress of switching over Lake Michigan water supply that was significantly delayed and slowed due to the changing of the mayor. It's been made public through online public meetings, and even it's been posted online, where the mayor has made statements to the effect that he has the ability to set the agenda for the board. Also, something that we found quite disturbing was the lack of closed meeting minutes being released. There was a significant delay of those. And also, through the course of our research, we found out that, and one of the residents also picked up on this as well, is that the board meeting minutes were, in some cases, significantly out of date. That they were missing from the village website, and by statute, the village should have had those posted. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of the underlying causes that we found when we did our research. The primary focus of our research focused on the government structure and the lack of just general transparency with the local government. And so after our initial discussions with the residents, we advised the residents to file a Freedom of Information Act or a FOIA request with the village to obtain the closed meeting minutes. Because a lot of times what was taking place is that you'd find conversations, more hearsay, conversations of, well, are they available or are they not? So in order to get the village on the record, we advised the residents to actually file a FOIA request to determine once and for all, are the minutes available? To which we found out that they were not. We did find out after the course, during our research, that after the FOIA request was filed, the village then began a serious process of going through and releasing the closed meeting minutes, the ones that were made available and not deemed to be deemed to be worthy of still keeping under in closed session. We also one of the instances that were brought up in our beginning conversations had to do with a meeting at the beginning of February, I believe it was. Discussions at the 911 call center were quite heated in the community. So There was a particular meeting that a lot of residents were expected to attend. It was documented in the media that the high school was set up to hold the meeting. The village made the choice to hold the meeting at Village Hall. They had a large turnout of residents, and not all residents were able to fully participate and engage in that meeting. So it was our recommendation to the residents that we were working with to file with the Attorney General's office for a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Because, and I'll explain this later, I'll go into more depth with the Open Meetings Act, but basically because they did not allow, the meeting was not convenient and open to the public as defined by the statute. So, like I said, I'll be touching base on that a little later on. And also part of our research looked at examining some of the ordinances in Wauconda and also looking at the Illinois Municipal Code. So basically what did we find? First thing is that regarding the police chief interim appointment, there is no time frame defined either by Wauconda stat ordinance or Illinois Municipal Code for interim appointments. There is also a lack of comprehensive local government transparency at the basic level. Now, Wauconda does pretty decent when it comes to transparency as far as having contact information available, ordinances online, and building permit information, and things like that. So it's not, there are definitely worse communities out there. With regards to just releasing meeting minutes, we found it to be quite disturbing that should not be happening. So, and we also found that there was no ordinance as far as who assembles the governing body's meeting agenda. So the first thing I want to talk about is the interim appointment time frame issue. Let's see here. The first thing I want to touch on is that having a time frame for an interim appointment is what we consider to be an essential check against the check and balance against the power granted to the mayor. We don't dispute that he has the ability to appoint an interim. When the need arises, it's perfectly within his ability and should be within his ability. But the interim should not have he should not be able to appoint an interim for what essentially would be the remainder of his term in office. We also, to kind of back up what we were reading and what we were understanding in our research, we reached out to our friends at the Citizens Advocacy Center, which is a great group of community lawyers, to kind of assess what our thoughts were. And they did confirm that the Illinois Municipal Code, in this particular instance, acts as a floor but not a ceiling. So the municipality does have the authority to create an ordinance, specifically a non-home rule municipality, has the ability to create an ordinance that would govern if it's a 30-day appointment, a 90-day, a 6-month, whatever the case might be. And we also we were looking at some other communities in the area for reference. As of to date, we have not found a municipal ordinance that discusses interim appointments, but yet that research is still ongoing. So let's see. So looking specifically at the beautiful Illinois Municipal Code. I'm not going to read all of it, of course, but the primary one we want to look at is the bottom line, where it says the mayor or president of the municipality may appoint a temporary successor to the officer. So in the case of the police chief, he vacated the position. For whatever reason that was, he vacated the position. In that instance, the mayor does have the authority under Illinois statute to appoint a successor as a temporary appointment. However, if you also notice within the statute, the law does not define what temporary is, so which leaves it open to debate and discussion. Another part, if you dig closer into the Illinois Municipal Code, you'll see when it comes to the police and fire commissions, normally they do have the right to appoint unless the municipality by ordinance states otherwise. In this case, as you'll see in the next slide here, going into the Village of Wauconda ordinance, Chapter 33, where it talks about the police chief can be appointed by the president with the advice and consent of the Board of Trustees. So as you can see, clearly, Wauconda does have an ordinance that states that the mayor does have the authority to appoint with consent of the board, of course. Okay, so now I want to talk about comprehensive transparency. It's our thought process that the transparency ordinance will be a good step for the community to take. This would be a good safety net and a check and balance against the elected officials for the residents, for not only the current administration but future administrations. We're looking at the Village of Lombard, which has probably the toughest local government transparency ordinance in the state. They've been recognized widely in the media for their further efforts, and also by the Illinois Policy Institute, which was doing research on local government transparency through their government transparency checklist. They think very highly of Lombard as well for their ordinance. We also would like to see the village and have the residents keep an eye on open data standards. And I could do there's a whole presentation to be done on open data, but basically what it is having the raw financial figures, the raw crime statistics, and that particular data sets available for people who have programming knowledge to come in, such as Code for America. They're a great organization doing work with all sorts of municipalities across the country, where they're actually taking raw data, not something they find on a PDF or something like that, but the actual figures themselves, the raw numbers, and turning those into usable applications, whether on your mobile device or even just on a website that you can go to. And you can manipulate the data so you can see what the financials, you can see from year to year what the financials are doing, and you can see it in a nice graphical format. So you don't have to be an accountant to understand it, but it makes it more accessible, and allows you to ask the good questions of your elected officials. So kind of, we're looking at what should a transparency ordinance contain. The one thing that we want to look at is elected and administrative officials. Now, Wauconda does have this information online, so you do have the ability to get contact information for your village trustees, your mayor, the village manager, and I believe the department heads even are online. I believe they even have contact information for them. Also the meeting information, which Wauconda does a great job with as well. I mean, but we would like to see the meeting minutes and board packets and that kind of information. We'd like to see that online for about 5 years. It gives people plenty of time. So you can go look back at what previous administrations have done. Just general information. I think it would be good for the residents to have. Let's see. And now keep in mind, some of this information, such as the meeting minutes and things like that, are governed by Illinois statute under the Open Meetings Act. So they do, they do have to have the meeting minutes posted online. I believe it's for 60 days that they're mandated to have them up there. So some of this is a little bit overlapping, but with some of these recommendations, it takes it a step further. So it's not just the minimum, it's going to be above and beyond what Illinois requires you to have. So, now for regards to the public records, the state law, like I said, already does require any local government that maintains a website to post the FOIA officer and the process for filing a FOIA request on their website. And then also with regards to village budgets, I believe Wauconda may only have, I might be mistaken, but I believe they only have one year's worth of budget information, might be two. But we'd like to see them actually go to what the current year and prior 4 years. And this allows residents to actually take a look at how the, how do I phrase that? How the agenda of the governing body has changed over the years, what's worked, what hasn't. So having the budget information online would be a great asset to residents, and also for watchdog groups, such as ourselves or Truth in Accounting, even to be able to access the information easily, and it's kind of a preventative for corruption to take place. So, yeah.
In fact, I had to. They had 1 year of comprehensive financial report online, but I had to ask for the village for 8 years. I was looking for 8 years of information. It'd be nice to have all that stuff up there on the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's only 1 year. I couldn't remember if it was 1 or 2, but yeah. Was that the most recent one?
Yes, they have it 213.
Yeah. And yeah, this kind of leads right into my slide here with the financial audits. Now I know typical thought process within the good government or the transparency community has been 5 years. Now, we like an organizational truth and accounting, would the recommendation would be to go further than that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think along, if the information is available, it's cheap to put it up on the website.
Right.
Yeah. Along history is very important, especially, we just went through the worst recession since our Great Depression, but it's good to have a feeling for how the village does in good times and bad, and getting some historical perspective.
Yeah, because it's all PDF information.
It's very simple to put up, and so why don't you put it up?
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy.
Yeah, we post PDFs to our website all the time. So we'd also like to see the TIF district. Well, I know you guys just got a TIF district basically implemented within the past year or so. So you don't have too many TIF reports that would be applicable. But when it as the years progress, we would like to see the TIF district reports that are filed with the state. We'd like to see those placed on the website as well. So we would also, actually to add on to this, the village should also, even if the TIF district is not doing anything, there's no financial transactions taking place, the TIF report should still be filed. We found an instance in the village of Franklin Park. They had, I want to say they had like 8 TIF districts. Now granted they're smaller and spread out throughout the community, but there were 2 or 3 new ones that they had, and they did not post the TIF reports for those TIF districts. They said because there was no financial activity taking place. We were, through further research with the Illinois Comptroller's Office, we were disappointed to find out that even though the village was required to report on those TIF districts, even though nothing was going on financially with them, so they say, they were required by Illinois law to do so. They had to report on those, but there was no financial penalty for them not doing that. So unfortunately, there was, other than they get their name on a list, but yeah, so even if there is no financial activity, we still like to see the TIF reports being filed in a timely manner as required by the state. So also the expenditures, credit card expenditures for at least the past 5 years should be posted online, in a very easy to read PDF. We'd like to see the PDF be searchable. It's typically what the kind of the gold standard. It should at least be searchable. So. Okay, so talking about the salaries and benefits. It's often the largest expenditure of tax dollars. So it's basic information that the village should post the salaries and benefits of their of the elected officials and the hired employees. So not the private salary and benefits of the elected officials, but what they receive through the through their service to the community. So also with regards to contracts, we would also like to see those posted online as it's kind of the best deterrent as we see it for deterring corruption and other back office dealings that can sometimes take place when it comes to bidding for projects and things of that nature. So. And lobby. We would like to see that the concept of local government hire a lobbying group and to lobby other levels of government, such as your state or county or even federal. I know sometimes it's a touchy subject for people, but local governments do hire lobbyists to obtain, either government grants or just to get a little money pushed their way for projects. And since sometimes it can be a significant amount of money that's being spent, we would also like to see the contracts for the lobbying firms or organizations that the municipality works with posted online, and also for at least a 5-year period, if not more. Taxes and fees, just from a standpoint of people knowing what taxes and fees exist. It'd be nice if the village had one central page that listed all of the taxes, such as vehicle licenses, any garbage fees, even a local sales tax. Even having that information online, it just makes it easier for those in the community, businesses as well, and maybe even those visiting the community, if they so choose to actually see what certain rates are. If you're thinking of moving into a community, you deserve the right to know what fees and tax you're going to be expected to pay. So, and it also makes it a lot easier for residents to see when increases are taking place. So, and then building and zoning. This is it's not so much of a transparency issue of any kind of corruption or anything like that. It just allows property owners and businesses to make better, well-informed decisions when it comes to planning projects and scheduling potential work to be done. So there's no surprises down the road and extra costs that may be incurred. So I want to talk about the issue of setting the agenda, since this has been a little contentious with some of the residents that we've talked with. Specifically, that this was stated at a public meeting that the mayor is stated that he has the ability to set the agenda. That's actually incorrect. He's considered part of the executive branch in the municipality. The executive branch does not have the authority to set the agenda for the legislative body. Now, digging further into it, the municipal code, unfortunately, depending on how you see it, they do not state who gets to set the agenda. Also, looking at the ordinances in Wauconda, there is nothing that defines who sets the agenda. Now, to kind of take it a step further, the board of trustees is governed by what's referred to as Robert's Rules of Order. So it's a nice thick book if you ever want to pick up a copy. I personally find it interesting, but it can get a little lengthy. So basically what it states, it's common especially in a small group setting, like the small board of trustees, it's common that you would find where the chair is the one who assembles the agenda. And so maybe they're the one responsible for putting the items together, as the case might be. But it's the board who actually sets the agenda. So there's nothing defining that the mayor has the ability to stop items from being placed on the agenda if the board believes it should be placed on it for discussion. We also, talking with the residents, our recommendation is that the board should define by ordinance, and they do have the right to do so, who actually sets the agenda. For example, the city of Elmhurst and a handful of other municipalities we look at, they actually do have it set in ordinance. City of Naperville. Now, I do want to warn the city. I mean, if someone looks this up, they might come back at me and say, well, those are home rule communities. It's true. City of Elmhurst, City of Naperville, home rule communities. So they do have extra leeway as far as what they can do. But this, but even looking at, but this is now one of those issues. The village does have the ability to define by ordinance who sets the agenda. In the city of Elmhurst, as I was saying, the village administrator or village manager is the one who assembles the agenda. He does not set the agenda. He simply assembles it. The board, with his staff and then the board as well, they decide what items are being placed on the agenda for discussion and for voting. So, and this is what I would consider a big check and balance against any administration in the future. By the mayor stating that he or she has the ability to set the agenda for the board, it sets a dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to have that thought process take place, because then you have the executive almost single-handedly controlling what the governing body or the legislative branch is doing. I'm not saying that I wanted you to clarify that. I'm not saying that is happening in this instance. This is something that that we're saying is a recommendation for future administrations. That it's a good precaution that the village should adopt. So, kind of going on to, kind of going back a little bit here regarding the Freedom of Information Act. Because I know a lot of times residents, you want to get involved in the community. You want to find out what's going on with the budget. You want to find out what the salaries are, or what a particular garbage contract is. But a lot of times that information is not posted online. So that becomes it can be a daunting process of thinking, well, how do I get this information? And then you hear people throw the word around FOIA request, or and for some it can be kind of a scary thing, and you're thinking, well, I don't have the time to to find out how do I file one, or the time to file one. So kind of in the interest of civic engagement, I wanted to talk a little bit more about FOIA. I know a lot of people here are fairly familiar with the process, because you guys have gone through it yourself. So, learning the ins and outs as you go. So, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but it is you can request records such as salaries, contracts, meeting minutes, closed meeting minutes, budgets, board packets. The board before every meeting receives kind of standards. The board will receive a packet of the ordinances or resolutions that are on the table on the meeting's agenda. And some municipalities are really good about it, posting it online. I know, for example, Lombard, they post it on the online. Naperville, I love what they do. They actually have, but on their Facebook page, if you sign up for their Facebook page, they actually will post an update prior to the board meeting that, the packet's posted online, so everybody can go and check it out. And it kind of gives you you then walk into the meeting understanding what's going on, or you can formulate your questions instead of hearing the discussion at the moment, or seeing a line item on the agenda and asking a question without having all of the proper information in front of you. So, also, once you file a FOIA request with the village, they have 5 working days after your request to respond. If they do not, because sometimes some records are harder to get than others. They have to dig through, file cabinets and papers. So in that instance, the village can come back to you before the 5 working days is up. They have to come back to you and they would have to give you the reason for requesting an extension. And then they could request like a 5 extra working day extension to fulfill that request. Now I know this is something that's been troubling for us. Talking with residents, we found out there's been instances specifically regarding, for one example, specifically regarding the closed meeting minutes. A FOIA request was filed back in, I want to say March, I think it was the beginning of March or very end of February, and it went beyond the 5 working days, and then it kind of just fell off the table. And the board started working, you can see in the meeting agendas, they started working on the closed meeting minutes, but there was no response given on the FOIA request. Essentially, what ends up happening is that if they go beyond the 5 days, if they don't respond to you, it's automatically determined to be a denial of your request. So without them giving a reason for that denial, the recommendation is that the automatic recommendation would be to go to the Attorney General's office and tell them, you file, it's just a simple form, you just file with the Attorney General, just say, the day that you filed your request, and you fill in all the pertinent information, and they didn't reply to you, and provide their supporting documentation. I do want to kind of caution from going to that step immediately, only because the people who are in the clerk's office typically is your FOIA officer. They have a lot of paperwork that they're going through. I mean, they have a full-time job that includes fulfilling these FOIA requests. I would recommend first picking up the phone. Give them a call, find out what the status is, or send them an email and find out what the status is of your FOIA request. Sometimes it could just be a slip up. I mean, there could be instances where the governing body, the administration, for whatever reason, is hesitant to provide you with a particular document. So the FOIA officer is stuck in this no-man's land where they're trying to fulfill your request that they have to by law. And then on the other hand, they're stuck, they're dealing with an administration that may not want to let a document go. Give the FOIA officer the opportunity to fulfill your request first. If they're not responsive and they refuse to communicate with you on your request, then by all means, contact the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Counselor. It's very easy to find off of their webpage, and they give you, it's just a very simple form, and they'll help you. They have a FOIA hotline. So, if you're unsure, should I file, should I not, you can pick up the phone and give them a call. And I've talked to them many times that they're more than willing to talk with you and help you and, give you recommendations on how you might want to, even possibly how you can solve a particular problem before you even have to file with the Attorney General for a review of your information at request. So. Kind of the next topic I want to talk about, and this is something I was touching on earlier with regards to the Open Meetings Act. Basically, it's a law that outlines how local government meetings are conducted in Illinois, and it also specifies in the Illinois Open Meetings Act how such things such as advance notice is required by the governing body prior to meetings. It's a very extensive piece of legislation. So One thing, the first thing I want to touch on is that the public body, once they cannot, the agenda must be posted prior to the meeting. The agenda cannot be changed less than 48 hours before the meeting takes place. Also, the public body, when they're in the meeting, they may not take action on items not listed on the agenda. So if there's a particular garbage contract or something that comes up for consideration, if it's not listed on the agenda, the board may not vote on that item. If they do, they violated the Open Meetings Act by doing so. They may, however, discuss any items that they want on the they may discuss any items even if they are not on the agenda. So if someone wants to talk about the village's summer help program or something like that, the trustees do have the option to speak about it, as a matter of opinion or otherwise, but they can't vote or take any action on the particular subject matter that they're talking about, unless it's specifically on the agenda itself. Also, a particular item to note is that the public body must hold a meeting at a specific time and place that is convenient and open to the public. And this kind of goes back to how we first got involved in the whole process. Excuse me. The statute, if you're reading specifically in the statute, does not define what open and convenient is. So in that instance where the statute does not define it, the courts are allowed to define it. There are two particular public opinions that came from the Attorney General's office. I know one of them was in 2012, I want to say the other one was in 2013. And in one of the instances, it had to actually do with the school board. I can't remember what the exact circumstances were, but for some reason the board decided to hold a meeting at I want to say it's the superintendent's house. Now they posted it, it was made public, they didn't define it, they didn't fail to comply with the Open Meetings Act under those terms. But but by having it in an inconvenient, what the courts deemed, or actually what the Illinois Attorney General's office deemed, was not considered to be open and convenient. So in the case of Wauconda, the meeting at about mid-February that took place at the Village Hall that should have properly been moved over to the high school, which was already established to be able to hold the meeting. And this is not, I do want to clarify, this is not my opinion, this is not the opinion of residents. It was documented by local media reports as well, that the high school was set up to hold this meeting. By the board not, and knowing, and that's it, and that's another thing, it also, they knew, there was a knowledge that the public turnout would be quite large for this particular meeting. And for the board to fail to act on it, it was our thought that, based on past prior rulings, that they did violate the Open Meetings Act by not meeting the standards of open and convenient for the public. So, and kind of touching back, oh, sorry.
So the mayor made the decision on that. So does he get the decision, or, because he didn't make the decision?
Well, in that instance,
He says what I heard him say, no, we don't need it.
yeah, he is the chairperson of the meeting. The board should, I believe, and I don't want to give you the wrong information, so I don't know specifically how that would play out in the meeting. The board would have, trustees would have the ability to speak up, because they also, trustees, I believe, they have to go through OMA training. They have to, through the Attorney General's office. So they would they should be well versed in this as well. Now, granted, this is a little minute, you know what I mean? Usually, the posting of the agenda is what you can and can't talk about, closed sessions, things like that. I mean, that's something that, elected officials are probably more likely to recall, this is something a little more kind of fine in the statute, but nonetheless, it's something that they should be well aware of. So the trustees, the board takes the fault for not doing that. It's not, if the trustee doesn't speak up, they're just as fault as the mayor is, as far as I'm concerned. They're an elected official. They are not an employee of the mayor. They do not work for the mayor. They work for the people. So at the end of the day, whether it looks proper in public for them to disagree with the mayor, their elected responsibility is to represent the best interests of the community and the residents that they serve. So, and actually the one resident that we were speaking with, she did go and file with the Attorney General's office on our recommendation. And they did send a letter stating that they will be researching it. And I know there's a recent letter there was a letter that was sent to the village requesting additional information for the instance of which it was filed against for that meeting. I have not yet seen the recent letter from the resident, but as soon as I do, and if you want, actually, I can give you my contact information after the meeting if you want. I can follow up with you on that as well. So I know the Attorney General's office is researching that particular case, and we expect them to find in favor of the residents and actually to make a binding opinion against the village for violating the Open Meetings Act. So.
What is then maybe you're going to get into it now, what's the consequence?
There is civil action to be taken. More or less what will end up happening is the Attorney General's office is not going to do anything. It's I know there are, I don't want to give you, because it's very specific in what the statute defines that can be done. But in most cases, from my conversations with the Attorney General and also some of the sessions I've been to where the Attorney General has had representatives speaking, they don't take action like civil or otherwise against the municipality unless it's an egregious act, basically, or you have instances where they're just continuously violating the Open Meetings Act and they just don't care what the statute says. Then they'll take the appropriate steps. But even just speaking with them, they said that it's rare that they'll actually take a court action against them.
But there will be like a public acknowledgement of it.
Mm-hmm. There definitely will be. There's whether it's a binding, now I believe the statute says once the Attorney General collects their Public Access Council, I should say, collects the information on the violation, then I believe it's a 60-day process that they have to make a determination. If they do it within, and I'm going to look this up after the meeting because I don't want to give you the wrong time frame, but I believe it is 60 days. If it's after the 60 days and they can still make their determination outside the 60 days. If it's inside 60 days, it's a binding opinion. In other words, they have to abide by that opinion. So if the instance ever came up again, the village would certainly have to move that meeting. If it's after that 60-day time frame, it's not a binding opinion, not a legally binding opinion, but it is something that the village should definitely take notice of. And not only that, the opinions are posted online and they're publicly available. So it's, in one sense, it's an embarrassment to the board to have had that happen. So there's no easy way of putting it. But
just a comment.
Yeah.
The fire marshal has posted on there, and usually like right here, maximum capacity. And if the village hall states that they have an occupancy of 118 people, and say there's 84 people in the meeting room, and the ones that are in the foyer, the entryway, decide that they don't want to come in, because there's not enough seating.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they could come and stand along the walls and this and that. Is that then in violation?
I would say no. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say no, because, I mean, there is an opportunity for residents to be in the meeting itself.
Albeit cramped.
Yeah, that's something I would actually do for.
Well, here's the thing now, and just from my perspective, I'm retired firefighter. And I did work in a bureau, and I personally did square footage. I know what what it is for just seating. How many square feet are allowed per person. If you have a table and chair, it's of course more. So just by my rough figures, and this is something that's going to be addressed. We have a new fire marshal. The old one retired, and I'm going to meet with him and to go over it. On my calculations, instead of 118, occupancy for that room should be, I think, 84.
Okay.
And that's something we have to address. Now, do we even have 84 chairs? I don't think so.
Yeah. In that particular instance, I mean, I would leave that up, because I personally don't know the exact case law as far as behind those particular public opinions or the binding opinions made by the AG. I would leave that up to them to determine, but it should still be, the meeting should still be held in a location where, where people can, hear properly what's going on. They can actively, participate by going, up to the microphone or whatever the case might be. So I don't want to comment on that end of it, because it's something that if that instance did occur, I would leave it up to the AG to determine how they want to define that.
And I think there's several things that are involved here. You brought up about being able to hear, and it has been addressed. A new speaker system, new sound system for the meeting room itself. From what I understand, that's been addressed. Do I sound like a resident? So these are things that will work, and it is a learning experience. And from the past, I believe, you can see the attendance at a meeting would maybe on the average over a year would be maybe 4 to 6 per meeting.
Oh yeah, that's the standard that you'll see.
Right, and now they're a little more well attended. So, these are things that have come up that are being addressed.
Is the occupancy for that room or for the whole building?
For that room.
Yeah. 116?
118, I believe.
Or 18 in that room?
If you take, just for chairs, you're allowed 7 square feet per person. If you get tables and chairs, it's 15 square feet per person. So I did a rough figure just counting ceiling tiles, or 2-foot tiles, you need a rough, and that's gross square footage. Now you have to go by net square footage because you have to have aisleways. You can't have chairs from wall to wall. There's going to be rest for people to get out and that.
And the podium, I think, takes up a lot.
See, that's another thing.
That's what I'm saying, the usable square footage.
Not the podium, or what? The side tables,
where the people sit, where the board sits.
Where the director sits. I don't count up on the days.
Yeah.
Where those 2 tables, those were figured into the 118 or whatever. I don't know.
It's like a lot of
it is.
Because, you could go into an entire restaurant and they don't.
Yeah.
So it's being addressed.
And on that particular meeting, another problem had been many people showed up at the high school, and then being the dead of winter and not being able to find parking either, we're not able to get into the village hall.
Yeah, that's...
Because they assumed it would be moved as Pastor had. In fact, the attorney himself showed up at the high school. So our village attorney showed up at the high school, as did our videographer, and many people in cars that couldn't find parking. So.
I know in the instances of people or residents assuming a meeting will be held based on, well, we think a lot of people will show up. I mean, that's not something that could be, addressed under that. But as far as if a room's an occupancy, you can hold X number of people, but it's not easy for people to be able to hear or participate in the meeting in any meaningful way. That's something that I definitely would leave up to the Attorney General to determine how they would consider that to be open and convenient based on the statute.
You don't have to provide a seat for them, everybody?
Nothing under the statute. Nothing I've been able to find in the Open Meetings Act where it says that a seat must be provided. It just defines it must be open and convenient. So,
Sitting on the floor is not convenient.
right. So, that's.
Standing is 3 square. But if they went that way, I had no chance.
So based on the information we had, the reports that we were reading, we think that the AG will rule in favor of that it was not considered open and convenient, especially, and this is something that gets into some of the binding opinions, particularly with the school board meeting, that there was an alternate location. I believe they stated there was an alternate location that could have been used. I think it was local library, I think they were stating. So, in a binding opinion that was made back in 2012, I think they said that a library could have been used in the event, or in this case, the high school for Wauconda. But we're waiting to see what the Attorney General will come back with on that instance. So it should be pretty interesting. Kind of going deeper into the Open Meetings Act regarding closed session, the public body may not take final action in closed session, which I think residents, you guys kind of experienced this not too long ago with regards to the closed meeting minutes. There were meeting minutes that were released to the public. The board came out of closed session to take action to approve those minutes to be put into public record. So, and also, some of the residents I spoke with, I know they posted them online, but we also posted them on our website. So when we were during our conversations with one of the members of the village administration, when it came to missing meeting minutes, when we were having our conversations with them, I also asked them to post closed meeting minutes online, just as they're not mandated by law to do so, just kind of a nature of goodwill, posting meeting minutes online, because if you don't, I can still obtain them, and any other resident can obtain them. So why not just post them online? It was disappointing to see that the village did not do that, so we did. And we told them that we would post them online if they did not. And I like keeping my promises. So
Yeah.
And then also with the closed meeting minutes, every 6 months the board should review past closed meeting minutes and determine which ones can and cannot be made public. So
I have a follow-up question to that. If they had gone over that 6 months and it took them X amount of time to come out with them, and now another 6 months has passed since they reviewed, should they now address the next 6 months of minutes, or do they get a new 6 months?
It's a new 6 months from the time that the way that
Even though they were late, even though they were 4 months late or whatever.
Yeah, because it doesn't define here. I haven't seen anything that defines by the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So every 6 months. So right. So since they just did it back in April, I want to say, is it April or April?
Yeah, maybe the end of April.
April, yeah. So then once they do a review, then a 6 month period begins.
Okay.
So even if it's 10 months,
So
now you start a new 6 months?
wait, okay, because what I'm confused is if they only reviewed those 6 months and not the meeting minutes up to when they reviewed, should they review that next 6 months?
That's something I'm continuing to look at,
Okay.
because the closed meeting and this is, I just haven't had the time to dig into it,
Yeah,
honestly.
Come on, Nick.
No, exactly. Because the closed meeting minutes that they released went up to September, I want to say. So you have September, right? So technically,
They only did the first 6 months.
right, reading the statute, you would say, well, they're in violation again because they haven't done the next 6-month period.
That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
That's something I'm continuing to look at. My initial thought is that yes, you're in violation again because you only did 6 months. Now you still have another 10 months or whatever the case might be because right now you're in June.
Yeah.
Or, well, yeah, you're in June as of tomorrow. So
Yeah.
my understanding, my initial thought is yes, you would be in violation again.
So basically, if you're over the 6 months, then technically every month is a new 6 months, right?
Well, yeah, because it continues to add on to the pile of lacking review of those minutes.
Right.
I don't want to state for certain, though, at least at this point, because it is something I do want to continue. I want to ask around a little bit. One of our other staff members, I want to talk with him about it. But yeah, my understanding is that yeah, you will be in violation again. The way I read the statute, the way I see it as being interpreted, I believe you would be. But I don't want to make that a definitive,
Would this be a goodwill effort if they just
Oh, yeah,
release the next 6 months now?
They could review closed meeting minutes every month if they want. They can, every other meeting if they want to review closed meeting minutes, they have the ability to do that. The statute doesn't say you can't. They just say at minimum you have to do it every 6 months.
Oh,
So, oh yeah, they have the right to do that if they want. Probably be a good idea, so you didn't have them build up on it.
Yeah.
The only issue you run into though is that with the closed meeting minutes, a lot of that is confidential information for either, it could be land purchases, it could be employment, things of that nature. So, if they did it every month, the board would probably end up coming back and saying, well, these are always, these continue to be closed. And they could do that for, 3 or 4 months before they might be able to release something. So there is the possibility of, it would be kind of a.
But you would also have to venture to guess that with all the closed meetings, that there would be something to release.
Yeah, it's very possible, yeah. I would say it's definitely possible that there could be information that could be, released earlier rather than waiting that 6-month period. But I mean, without knowing exactly what's being discussed, it would just be my assumption. In that issue of the 6-month mark, that is something I'm going to continue to look at. So.
Staying on it, Nick, is there anything in closed session minutes that may never be released for any reason?
I would think that there are probably items that that may remain in closed session for the life of it. The minutes have to be kept.
Okay.
I mean, I could certainly see circumstances where that would be the case. Personnel, health or employment records or things like that might, in certain circumstances, I could see, that would have to remain forever.
Okay.
I wouldn't count that out. And this is also something where if someone believes, and this happened in Elmhurst maybe 6 months ago. There was an issue with a parking. I think it was a parking garage facility that was being constructed, and the board went into closed session. And actually, in the particular instance, to discuss matters relating to the land or what they deemed to be issues with the purchase of the land and otherwise, the board went into closed session. One of the trustees in that meeting thought, hey, we shouldn't be discussing this in closed session. It should be an open session issue. And the trustee then reached out to a government watchdog group and said, this has been going on. I don't think this is right. And then they filed with the Attorney General's office against the board that it should be that the discussion should be taking place in open session. So there are instances of that, so it's something just to be aware of.
So who makes the decision? What stays closed forever, or what gets released, or is it the attorney, advice of the attorney, or?
Well, I know I'm certain the board would go with the advice of the attorney, because if they release confidential information that's not supposed to be public, that there is a threat of lawsuits and stuff coming against the village for, I'm sure there would be a threat of lawsuit against them. But it's ultimately, it is the board's decision to make. Yeah, they're the ones that.
You just advise us.
Right, yeah, it is the board's decision.
I guess a question on that too. So on the reverse side, like you're saying, there could be things that shouldn't be discussed in closed session.
Right.
Do you see that where that has been a problem taking place in towns where they can, that as a loophole, say, hey, it's a closed session item, we can't discuss it?
Yeah, a lot of times, I don't know personally of any examples, at least at this point. I know there's, if there's an instance where a resident believes something, whether they find out through the grapevine or otherwise that something's being discussed, or there's an item on the agenda and it just doesn't, it's under closed session. Well, obviously when you go to the closed session agendas, it's only the legal description.
Right.
But if there's a belief that something's being discussed in closed session that shouldn't, you can go to the Attorney General's office and ask them to, you can talk to them about it and ask them to review the issue. Because the Attorney General, now you won't get the meeting minutes, but the Attorney General's office can obtain those meeting minutes. So.
Including the tape of the meeting minutes, am I right? I remember reading that, including the tape.
Yeah.
Taped. So Attorney General would subpoena all of that and obtain it and review it.
Yeah, the Public Access Council does have the right to obtain that information for review. They can come back and say, it's within the scope of the law, they're perfectly right, they're right to do so. And then there could be the instance where, no, you get your hands slapped because you shouldn't be talking about this in closed session. So.
Okay, I know we've interrupted your presentation.
No, this is what I wanted.
Okay.
So this is perfect. And so I just kind of wanted to just close up and wrap up on how, as a resident, you can be involved in your local government. I highly encourage you to attend your local board meetings. I know a lot of you are really good about that already. Attend even the committee meetings. In actuality, if you want to see the real work of your local government go on, go to a committee meeting. That's where the bread is made, basically. So, when you go to the regular board meetings, it can be interesting, some discussions that might take place and everything, but usually those are just more or less for final action for voting on a particular agenda item. But definitely go to your committee meetings.
Yes.
And then make sure you vote.
Yeah.
Yes, please vote.
Thank you.
What's the one prior to that, Nick?
Huh?
What's the one prior to vote?
Make sure you
Asking
register.
for local office.
Yeah.
If you have a good idea, it's definitely worth going for. So.
If you're doing it for the right reasons, from the right
Right.
I think if you're going to run for office, I think you have to have a little bit of an ego to do it. To think that you have the answers to the problems.
Come on,
You can just be altruistic, but there are sometimes egos. Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that your cell phone, Nick?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me, so. No, thank you.